Hand over your architecture files," he demanded, tossing an empty energy drink can toward the recycling bin and missing by 3 feet like aim was beneath him. Jacob Emerson, 26, spine like overcooked linguine, ego like a hot air balloon tethered to nothing, slouched against my office doorframe wearing boat shoes without socks and the expression of someone who'd never faced a single consequence in his chronically unexamined life. I studied him from behind my monitor, calculating which was more pathetic, that he genuinely believed he deserved what he was asking for, or that he'd probably go home tonight convinced he'd earned it through merit. If you're new here and enjoying these powerful stories, make sure to hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more. Let me know in the comments what part of today's story touched you most. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been the one steering the most critical infrastructure overhaul in Vanguard Tech's 12-year history. After nearly 5 years of wrestling legacy payment systems into something banks would actually certify, we were finally within striking distance of our Series C, a gorgeous $85 million round, entirely dependent on this deployment going smoother than aged bourbon. I'd architected every integration layer, debugged every timeout error, even patched a catastrophic API failure at 3 a.m. on Thanksgiving while my sister's kids played charades in my living room. This platform wasn't just another project on my resume. It was my goddamn masterpiece, proof that a woman from a state school could outcode, outthink, and outlast every Ivy League bro who'd ever talked over her in a technical review. But masterpieces mean nothing when nepotism arrives wearing Tom Ford cologne and a job title created specifically to accommodate someone's underachieving offspring. One all-hands meeting later, CO Gregory Emerson's voice went smooth as silk over the company-wide call. To position us strategically for Q4 expansion, I'm thrilled to announce my son Jacob will be joining us as Senior Integration Lead. Not architect, not principal engineer, senior integration lead, which as far as I could determine meant he got to break things without understanding what he was breaking or why it mattered. The following morning I logged into our project management system and saw a notification that felt like a punch to the sternum. New administrative privileges assigned, Jacob E. Just like that. No transition plan, no knowledge transfer, no institutional respect. Like I was supposed to applaud while this walking LinkedIn inspiration post dismantled 5 years of careful engineering. But hey, before Jacob deletes this entire story with his incompetence and his daddy's credit card, do me a favor. If you've stuck around this long and you're enjoying this tale of corporate malpractice and surgical revenge, smash that subscribe button and drop us a like. 93% of you lovely chaos enthusiasts forget. It genuinely helps us keep making content that validates your rage against workplace injustice. Now back to the disaster in progress. Jacob stumbled into his new role with all the grace of a giraffe on roller skates. First executive decision: rename our payment gateway from Secure Flow to Velocity Pulse because, and I quote, "it sounds more aggressive in the marketplace." Then he scheduled a 3-hour brainstorming session to realign our innovation vectors, which is how I discovered that some people can fill a conference room with words that contain no actual meaning. By day 2 he was asking me what the difference was between front-end and back-end architecture. By day 4 he wanted to know if we really needed separate testing environments or if that was just corporate tradition slowing us down. And by the end of week 1 he'd archived our entire bug tracking database because I absolutely am not making this up. Dwelling on problems manifests more problems. His leadership philosophy was equal parts Silicon Valley cosplay, motivational poster gibberish and weaponized cluelessness. Sure stayed useless as always. I filed a detailed concern after he accidentally purged 3 months of compliance documentation. Their response: let's foster collaborative growth during transitional phases. Progress over process. I nearly threw my laptop through the window. Our head of engineering, Leonard, normally the most measured person in any room, pulled me into a private video call and just exhaled for 5 solid seconds. "Listen, just document everything," he finally said. "Keep backups. He'll implode eventually. They always do." I nodded, professional mask firmly in place. But underneath, something colder and sharper was taking shape. Because Jacob wasn't just annoying or incompetent. He was genuinely dangerous. And the only reason Vanguard Tech hadn't combusted yet was because I'd quietly built safeguards he didn't even know existed, layers of protection he couldn't see and therefore couldn't destroy. He started swapping out tested modules for experimental frameworks he'd found on developer forums. Gutted the user authentication flow I'd spent 8 months perfecting and replaced it with some crypto bro nonsense he'd downloaded off GitHub. When I questioned his choices in our team channel, he responded with a gif of a guy shrugging. Just that. A shrug. Then he removed my commit access to 2 of our core repositories. But the real alarm bell came on a Friday afternoon. Most of the team had already logged off for the weekend. I was finishing documentation when I noticed a system alert. Elevated permissions granted, administrator-level access, assigned to Jacob again. Which shouldn't have been possible because only the CTO, CFO and I held keys to that tier of system control, and none of us had approved any expansion of his privileges. I clicked deeper into the audit logs. The signature on the approval form. Mine. Forge. And that's when I stopped being frustrated. That's when I started building the trap. The first time Jacob spoke during a product strategy meeting, he used the word disrupt 11 times in under 2 minutes and suggested we gamify the payment experience, like he was ordering avocado toast with a side of delusion. I watched our lead backend developer's face go through 5 stages of grief in real time. Nobody applauded. Nobody even acknowledged the suggestion. But Jacob didn't notice. He was too busy scribbling in a leather-bound journal like he'd just discovered fire and wanted to patent it before anyone else could claim credit. This compliance framework, he announced, gesturing at our system architecture diagram like a magician revealing a disappointing trick. It's too rigid. We need fluidity engagement. Make it feel like Instagram but for financial regulators. I stared at him across the conference table, wondering what cosmic joke had landed me in this specific hell. A room full of experienced engineers. All of us pretending a child hadn't just finger-painted over 18 months of regulatory preparation. He pivoted toward me smirking. So yeah, I'll need full access to your architecture documentation. I'm taking point on the rebuild. He said it like he was doing me a courtesy, like I should be grateful to hand over years of institutional knowledge to someone who'd Googled, "What is API?" 3 days ago. I smiled. Not because anything was funny. Because smiling kept me from saying what I actually thought, which involved several creative suggestions about where he could store his vision board. The CTO coughed awkwardly. Our project lead suddenly became fascinated by her phone. Nobody said anything. They all understood this was organizational suicide in slow motion, but nobody possessed the courage or authority to intervene. HR followed up that same afternoon with a cheerful email. Let's create space for fresh perspectives, they chirped. You're exceptional at documentation and mentorship. Help bring him up to speed. I built the entire system, I replied flatly. Exactly, came the response, like that somehow proved her point. It'll be wonderful optics if you two collaborate visibly. Collaborate. Corporate speak for shut up and tolerate this. Jacob started systematically deleting technical documentation I'd written, replacing it with AI-generated garbage that read like a drunk algorithm hallucinating about blockchain. He stripped out critical warning flags I'd embedded in deployment procedures. Removed rollback protocols from our CI/CD pipeline. Kept bragging on Slack about how clean and minimal his new architecture looked. Clean like a hospital that just turned off the life support system to reduce utility costs. He didn't understand the platform. Didn't care to learn. Just painted over structural problems with buzzwords and acted like aesthetics equaled engineering. When our QA team flagged his code, pointing out infinite loops, missing error handlers, entire functions that literally couldn't compile, he posted a gif of someone throwing papers in the air with the caption, "Not my vibe." When they escalated the issues, he tagged me publicly in Slack and wrote, "Talk to your team. They're being dramatic about minor details." My team. I'd spent 4 years building that team. Hiring engineers who actually gave a damn. People who understood that when financial compliance software fails, real humans face real legal consequences. And now they were being treated like paranoid children because the CEO's son wanted to play startup founder without learning how startups actually work. Jacob rewrote our product roadmap without consulting anyone, moved the launch date up by 3 weeks, reassigned our senior UX designer to brand storytelling initiatives, and terminated our legal consultant's contract without informing our general counsel. When I brought this up again, carefully, diplomatically, in a private message, he snapped back immediately. "I'm running this project now. You're not. If you can't handle that reality, take a vacation or find another job." That's when I understood this wasn't just corporate incompetence or generational entitlement. This was elimination. He wasn't trying to sideline me or take credit. He was trying to erase me. Rewrite history so completely that nobody would remember I'd built anything at all. It was petty, vindictive, and exactly what I'd expected from someone who'd never been told no, never faced failure, never experienced consequences. So I stopped arguing, stopped pushing back, just started quietly documenting everything. Every Slack exchange, every code commit, every bizarre system log with my forged signature attached to approvals I never gave. Leonard, our head of engineering, started avoiding me in virtual meetings. Eventually, he caught me in a private message, words careful and strained. Just keep quiet for now, he typed. Let this play out. He'll crash eventually. He's crashing right now, I responded. We're just not acknowledging the wreckage yet. Leonard went silent for a long moment before replying. Yeah. Not loudly enough yet. Just be patient. So I nodded through my screen, smiled into the void, and began systematically backing up the real build. Quietly. Securely. Far beyond Jacob's reach or comprehension. Because if he wanted to burn Vanguard tech to the ground, I was absolutely going to be the one holding both the fire extinguisher and the insurance policy, and I'd decide exactly when and how to use them. Jacob swaggered into Monday morning's stand-up like he'd just cured a disease with a vision board and positive affirmations. We're doing a full platform migration by end of week, he announced, snapping his fingers like we were contestants on a game show. Old infrastructure's out. My stack is faster, leaner, way more scalable. Trust the process. Scalable. This from a man who thought cache invalidation was slang for canceling your streaming subscriptions. I stared at my screen, blinking slowly, hoping if I stayed perfectly motionless this nightmare would dissolve like a bad dream. It didn't. By lunch, our staging environment was gone. Completely wiped. No warning, no backup plan, just a gleeful fresh slate incoming post in our team channel, accompanied by a gif of a toddler smashing a cake. He called it revolutionary architecture. What it actually was, a Frankenstein monster of half-tested microservices held together with duct tape, prayer and plugins he'd found on Reddit. Something called TurboStack, which I'm reasonably confident was coded by 3 guys in Bulgaria last Tuesday. Jacob didn't write integration documentation. Didn't notify QA or DevOps. Just nuked everything and grinned while the building burned. By 2 p.m. my system access was restricted. Admin rights revoked. Deployment logs inaccessible. Permissions downgraded to read-only, and even that was unreliable at best. One of our junior developers pinged me privately, panicked. Why is our test suite routing to a deprecated API endpoint? I checked the permissions dashboard and discovered Jacob had assigned himself as primary systems architect across all nodes using a custom role that hadn't existed 4 days ago. I walked into Leonard's virtual office, closed the chat window to private, sat back in my chair. You seeing what he's doing? Leonard didn't look up from his screen. Just rubbed his temples like they'd personally betrayed him. He deleted staging. Locked me out. Pushed untested code straight to production branches. The investors are expecting a live demo in 10 days. I know. So just write it out, Leonard said, finally making eye contact through the camera. Keep logs. Document everything. He'll implode eventually. Eventually. I laughed, sharp and humorless. We're one corrupted deployment away from legal liability. This isn't politics anymore. This is fraud. I know, he repeated, softer this time, sadder. Not yet. That was the moment something fundamental shifted inside me. Not a dramatic snap or a mental breakdown. Just a slow, deliberate tightening, like a lock clicking into place. I left his virtual office without another word and returned to my desk. Opened an old system admin account I'd created during the alpha phase of our platform, buried under 3 layers of vendor compliance testing infrastructure. It still worked, thank God for lazy decommissioning protocols. I opened my terminal and began encrypting the last known stable build. Version 3.2.1 pre-Jacob. Moved it into a secure container, then transferred everything to an isolated storage partition tucked inside an abandoned sandbox environment we'd spun up 2 years ago for GDPR compliance trials. Nobody ever cleaned it out. Nobody remembered it existed except me. I named the directory client_archive_recovery_final_v2, added some decoy configuration files, and layered access through a dummy SSH route that would trigger a harmless error message if anyone accessed it without the correct authentication sequence. This wasn't just a backup anymore. It was a lifeboat. And the storm wasn't coming. It was already here. I was just done pretending we could outrun it. The rest of that week felt like watching a toddler juggle chainsaws while adults applauded politely and pretended everything was fine. Jacob ran 2 internal demos using fabricated datasets and announced we were tracking toward platinum tier certification, which isn't a real thing in our industry. He started hosting leadership syncs without inviting any actual team leads. Threw around phrases like compliance gamification and experiential audit dashboards. Referred to our client transaction logs as legacy friction. Every time I opened Slack, I expected someone to finally scream. Nobody did. They were too exhausted, too afraid, or both. HR sent me a wellness check survey with questions like, how energized are you about our new direction? And do you feel your contributions are valued effectively? I deleted it without responding. I was too busy feeding my lifeboat. Documentation, configuration files, database schemas, clean SQL exports. Even old rollback procedures Jacob didn't know existed because he'd never bothered learning how the system actually worked. I kept everything under strict version control, timestamped in triplicate, stored across redundant nodes. Because when this platform inevitably crashed, and I knew with absolute certainty it would crash, I needed to prove beyond any shadow of doubt that I hadn't built the wreckage. I'd built the escape route. By Thursday, Jacob announced he was planning a comprehensive access restructure to optimize control flow pathways. Translation: lock more people out so nobody could see how badly he was breaking things. When I heard that through the grapevine, I didn't panic. Didn't argue. Just uploaded the latest snapshot of the stable build, triple-checked the encryption keys, verified the redundancy backups, and smiled. Because when you build something from the ground up, you don't just know where the bodies are buried. You know where to dig them up, how to preserve them, and exactly when to present them as evidence. 2 weeks before the investor demo, Jacob strutted around the office like he'd already been featured in Forbes, arms crossed, rehearsing lines like next-generation compliance ecosystems in the bathroom mirror. He called an all-hands meeting Monday morning just to announce he'd be personally running the live demo. No script, no technical support, no practice runs. Rehearsals kill authenticity, he proclaimed, sipping a green smoothie like it was champagne. We want them to feel the product. Raw. Disruptive. Nobody spoke. I think we collectively accepted we were passengers on a ship steered by someone who'd never seen an ocean before and thought icebergs were a myth. I messaged our QA team 5 minutes after the meeting ended. Run full regression testing. All modules. Do not skip anything. They didn't skip anything. What they found made my blood run cold. Authentication tokens misfiring randomly. Server response delays averaging 9 seconds per request. UI elements crashing on mobile devices. A data retention bug that literally allowed users to overwrite compliance records with emojis. Actual emojis in fields meant for federal audit trails. I forwarded the full report to Jacob with a carefully worded message. Critical issues flagged. Recommend postponing demo until resolved. He responded with a gif of someone yawning. 2 hours later, QA's access to our issue tracking system was revoked. Just gone. Every bug report, deleted. The system reverted to its pre-integration state like none of the testing had ever happened. When I confronted him via direct message, he actually laughed. We don't need bug reports. That's just anxiety programming. This is a confidence-based build now. A confidence-based build. Like financial compliance platforms run on manifestation and good vibes. I took a walk around the block to keep from throwing my laptop through a window. I came back to a Slack notification from one of our junior developers. Alexis, sharp, quiet, always the last one to log off, the first to notice problems. She'd never messaged me privately before today. He's deleting environment logs. I stared at the screen, pulse quickening. 3 full days missing from staging. No trace of test activity. It's like he's erasing rollback history. I asked her to jump on a quick call. She whispered the entire conversation like she was hiding from surveillance. He's running everything through a private branch, she said, voice tight. No peer reviews. No oversight. Pushing hotfixes directly to production. When I asked about rollback points, he told me, don't stress it. We're manifesting stability. Manifesting stability. Like servers run on positive thinking and essential oils. I thanked Alexis, told her to keep her head down and document everything she could safely access. Then I opened the original compliance charter from Vanguard Tech's early days, Back when we were 8 people in a co-working space surviving on ramen and ambition. And there was Section 9C. In the event of emergency protocol violations during scheduled regulatory review, founding engineering team members retain one-time emergency recovery override access. That was me. Technically, I wasn't a founder, but I was listed as lead systems architect in the original incorporation documents. In the chaotic rush of building this platform before we had real lawyers or proper governance, someone, namely me, had written themselves into the recovery clause as a failsafe. I hadn't touched it in years. Never needed to. Now I did. I executed the override. One-time non-renewable access window, 6 hours. System-wide visibility restored. Write privileges across shadow partitions unlocked. I used those 6 hours to do 3 things. First, secured a pristine copy of our last fully functional rollback point, pre-Jacob's involvement. Second, snapped an encrypted audit trail of every administrative action Jacob had taken over the past 3 weeks, time-stamped, IP-logged, irrefutable. Third, activated a deadman's trigger on the mirror environment that would alert me immediately if anyone attempted to delete or modify it. Then I closed the access window and scrubbed my digital trail so thoroughly it sparkled. If anyone found evidence of the override, they'd assume it was a system glitch logged during a server time sync. The next day, Jacob walked around like Caesar entering Rome, telling everyone we were redefining disruption in real time. He posted a selfie in the break room holding a dry erase marker like a sword, captioned, "Slashing Legacy. Building Future." HR reposted it on LinkedIn with 3 hashtags. My phone buzzed with secondhand embarrassment. That same afternoon, our QA team lead resigned. Just packed up and left without ceremony. Said his conscience couldn't take it anymore. The rest of the team went silent after that. Stopped asking questions. Stopped pushing back. Just muted notifications and waited for the inevitable. Legal sent out a friendly reminder about IP policies and non-disclosure agreements. Everyone felt it. The tension. The smell of structural collapse. Meanwhile, Alexis sent me one last message late that night. He tried to delete the main container logs. Your trigger fired. I think he's getting nervous. Good. He should be. Because if Jacob was going to burn Vanguard Tech to the ground, I was damn sure going to make certain the insurance policy had my name on it, the recovery documentation had my signature, and the blame landed exactly where it belonged. Jacob's new dashboard looked like a slot machine had a baby with a meditation app. Neon gradients everywhere. Sparkles on every button click. Fake real-time statistics cycling through dozens of meaningless performance indicators. Total compliance synergy events, 3,847. Regulatory wins this week, plus 42%. An obnoxious chime every single time a user submitted a form. Jacob practically vibrated with pride, spinning in his desk chair like he just coded the solution to climate change. You love it, right? He beamed, gesturing toward the massive monitor like a game show host revealing a prize. Animated success tokens. Regulators are going to flip. I blinked slowly. The success tokens are GIFs. Dynamic GIFs, he corrected smugly like the word dynamic made them less catastrophically stupid. Worse than the glitter and fabricated metrics was the button in the bottom right corner. Bright red. Impossible to miss. I hovered my cursor over it. Tooltip. Deletes all legacy architecture files for optimized system refresh. That wasn't a feature. That was a nuclear bomb with a bow on it. A shiny, idiot-proof self-destruct button sitting directly on the production dashboard for a live investor demo. You put a delete all function on the main interface, I said carefully, voice flat. It's symbolic, Jacob said dismissively. A fresh start. A visual metaphor for transformation. It's a catastrophe waiting to happen. It's innovation. 12 other people sat in the conference room. I looked around. Nobody met my eyes. They'd all learned the same survival lesson. Don't get between Jacob and his terrible ideas. He wouldn't listen. Gregory wouldn't intervene. Itcher was probably off somewhere drafting inspirational emails about embracing chaos. Jacob tapped the whiteboard with a marker and cleared his throat dramatically. This is about energy, he declared. Not just code. Not just platforms. Energy. We're not here to fix yesterday's problems. We're here to transcend them. He turned toward me, finger pointing like a weapon. And honestly, some people here are just dead weight from the old regime. He held the pause like it was a mic drop. Like he'd just delivered the killing blow in a rap battle. I didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Didn't break. Just smiled politely, gathered my notebook and walked out of that meeting. Then I got to work moving the real platform. I used the mirror server I'd built back during our GDPR compliance trials, buried deep in the vendor integrations directory under an archaic naming convention from our beta era. Nobody had touched it in 3 years. I rerouted the access port, re-encrypted the root directory structure, and systematically copied over every critical component of the stable version. Functional login modules, verified audit trails, rollback automation, secure report generation, real-time error logging. The things actual clients needed. The things Jacob had either broken or replaced with visual noise. I scrubbed metadata, masked IP origins, then obfuscated the repository name to make it appear like a deprecated pilot program from an acquisition we'd abandoned in 2018. I named the server Echo under 5, because I knew I'd be hearing from it soon. By 1 a.m. the full recovery environment was live, isolated, invisible, protected. I shut my laptop, poured 2 fingers of whiskey and sat in my dark kitchen listening to the hum of the refrigerator. The clock on the microwave blinked 1:14 a.m. and I realized for the first time in weeks my hands weren't shaking. Jacob's platform was a bomb. But I'd built the bunker, buried it 6 feet deep with the real blueprints, and I was the only one holding the detonator. He thought I was dead weight. A relic from the old regime. Obsolete. What these trust fund fail-sons never understand is that the old guard doesn't disappear. Remember, we document. And when the power goes out, we're the only ones who know where the breaker box is, how to fix it, and whether we feel like flipping the switch back on. Demo day arrived like a parade of expensive suits and suppressed panic. Vanguard Tech rented out one of those aggressively modern event spaces downtown. Too much exposed brick, not enough ventilation, and a barista in branded gear pulling espresso shots like we were about to disrupt the concept of caffeine itself. Investors filtered in, carrying leather portfolios and thinly veiled skepticism. Some from venture firms. Others from investment banks. One woman from the SE sat near the back sipping something green, notepad already open, the kind of person who could smell liability from across a room before it even materialized. And there center stage stood Jacob. Hair gelled within an inch of its life, wearing a shirt so aggressively fitted it violated several laws of physics, grinning like the Joker before a soliloquy. Gregory Emerson, CEO and Father of the Year, practically glowed with paternal delusion. Kept clapping Jacob on the shoulder like he was unveiling the next Steve Jobs instead of a PowerPoint filled with stolen work and wishful thinking. "You're in for something special," Gregory announced, tapping his champagne glass. "My son has spearheaded a revolutionary redesign of our compliance platform. Faster, leaner, more intuitive. A genuine leap forward for the industry." I sat near the back. Arms folded. Face neutral. No name tag. No introduction. No acknowledgement of the fact that I'd designed 94% of the architecture they were about to parade around like it descended from the heavens on a unicorn. Jacob stepped up to the touchscreen podium and launched into what he called his vision statement. I counted 6 uses of the word synergy in the opening sentence alone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, spreading his arms like a televangelist. "Welcome to the future of compliance. Today we're shedding the constraints of outdated systems and embracing what's next." Behind him the screen flickered to life. His dashboard. Animations. Sound effects. A bar graph that pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. Numbers spun like slot machine reels. Total client syncs. Audit successes. Projected cost savings. All of it fabricated. Pure front-end theater with no functional data engine underneath. But the audience didn't know that. Not yet. Investors leaned forward. Phones came out. The SEC representative scribbled something in her notepad. Jacob swiped through interface tabs, voice rising with confidence. "We've gamified regulatory compliance. Simplified user workflows. Reduced friction points by," he paused for dramatic effect, grinning, 68%. That number materialized from thin air. I knew because I'd reviewed the actual performance data. He had nothing. Just animated lies and unfounded confidence. "And now," he continued, "I'm going to show you the feature we're most proud of. Something that will fundamentally redefine your expectations for compliance technology." He tapped the bright red button in the bottom corner. Let's start with a clean slate. A cheerful chime sounded. A loading bar appeared, filling slowly from left to right. My chest tightened. Not from fear. From recognition. I'd seen that loading sequence hundreds of times. Understood every trigger behind it. Knew exactly what chain of commands Jacob had just initiated. The room went silent. The kind of silence that happens in a movie theater right after the villain wins and right before everyone realizes the hero is already dead. The screen flashed once. Then twice. Then everything went black. The dashboard collapsed. All widgets vanished. Background grid disappeared. Terminal output flooded the screen in raw text. Error messages. Permission failures. Unresolved file paths. A syntax dump in white text against a void. Jacob blinked. Tapped the touchscreen again. Nothing happened. Just a moment. There's a rendering delay. He tapped again. Still black. Gregory leaned forward in his seat. Someone in the front row muttered, "Did it just crash?" The SEC representative looked up from her notes, eyebrows raised. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. Jacob started sweating. Visible beads forming on his forehead. He fumbled with the keyboard, hands trembling. There's some deployment lag. Might be a caching issue. It wasn't. It was a permission cascade triggered by the clean slate button, which under his architecture executed a deletion command targeting the legacy root directory, a folder he'd hardwired directly to everything he didn't understand, including the active build environment. He hadn't backed it up. Hadn't isolated test environments. Hadn't even sandboxed the demo. He just pulled the pin on a grenade and swallowed it whole. And now 60 people were watching the shrapnel fly. I glanced toward Leonard, our head of engineering. He sat frozen, jaw tight, eyes slowly shifting toward me across the room. He knew. Everyone who mattered was about to know. Me. I leaned back in my chair, sipped my mediocre coffee and watched the disaster unfold in high definition. Because I already knew this moment was coming. I just hadn't anticipated how satisfying it would feel to watch it arrive exactly on schedule. First came the silence. That thick, suffocating silence that descends after a car accident, when everyone's ears are ringing and nobody knows who should speak first or what they could possibly say. Then the screens died. All of them. Even the backup monitor Jacob had prepared for his personal presentation flow, flickered twice and gave up. Just one lonely blinking cursor remained in the top left corner, pulsing like a dying heartbeat. Then the error messages began rolling. One after another. Cascading across the terminal window in angry white letters. Error 6002. Error 7014. Environment. Error 10003. Path/legacy. Investors stopped whispering and started staring. Phones came out not to record success but to document failure. Jacob's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. His lips moved like he was still trying to narrate his vision. Still trying to maintain character, as if enough confidence could resurrect a dead system. One investor stood up. Calmly. Quietly. Picked up her briefcase, tucked her tablet under her arm and walked directly to the elevator. No words. Just exit. Several others shifted uncomfortably, murmuring behind portfolios and branded water bottles. Gregory Emerson, CEO and increasingly desperate father, stood abruptly like someone had shocked him. We've been experimenting with some cutting-edge infrastructure layers, he stammered. Really pushing boundaries. So this minor hiccup might just be a natural consequence of innovation. Leonard, the head of engineering, said nothing. Just slowly turned in his seat and looked directly at me. Not panicked. Not angry. Just that long, quiet look of a man realizing he ignored the fire alarm too long and now the house is ash. I met his gaze evenly and shrugged. Then I spoke, voice calm and clear enough to cut through the murmuring. I haven't touched the production build in over 3 weeks. Jacob spun around. What? That's not, you were in the logs. I saw your name on approvals. I tilted my head slightly. Did you? Or did you see a static archive process running under my old admin credentials? The ones I haven't used since before you arrived? The SEC representative raised an eyebrow, pen poised. Jacob opened his mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. Then turned back to the podium and started desperately mashing keys like volume could somehow restore functionality. The projector flashed another error message. Try refreshing, Gregory suggested weakly to nobody in particular. One of the younger venture capitalists laughed under her breath, short and sharp. Another muttered something that sounded like Jesus Christ, and began typing furiously on her laptop, probably drafting an email with the subject line. Immediate concerns Vanguard Tech Demo. Jacob tried talking over the rising tension. This isn't the final build. This is just a staging environment for visual proof of concept purposes. The actual product is under development on a separate. He turned toward me, desperation finally cracking through the confidence. This isn't your architecture, right? I said nothing. Didn't nod. Didn't shake my head. Just kept my arms folded, watching him spiral in real time. Because it wasn't my build. Not anymore. Every shortcut. Every deleted safeguard. Every overwritten staging log. Every critical flag stripped away for aesthetic minimalism. All of it carried his signature, his timeline, his administrative fingerprints. He'd loaded the gun, aimed it at his own foot, and pulled the trigger. I just refused to step in front of the bullet. Gregory looked like he'd swallowed broken glass. Fix this, he hissed at Leonard. Leonard didn't respond. Just stared straight ahead at nothing. The screens finally surrendered completely, replacing the cascade of errors with the operating system's emergency failsafe screen. No system environment detected. Reinstall required. And with that single message, the illusion shattered. This wasn't a pivot. Wasn't a minor setback. Wasn't a challenging launch. It was a public execution of competence, broadcast live to the people who signed checks with 8 zeros. And the man at the controls was a trust fund disaster with a vision board and a delete button. Me. I just sat there sipping burnt coffee, waiting for the real questions to begin. The room stayed frozen long after the screens died, like someone had vacuum-sealed all the oxygen and replaced it with pure dread. Jacob kept muttering to himself, clicking through windows that no longer existed, tapping keys that did nothing, moving his mouse over a void. The investors had stopped pretending to be polite. They were watching now with the cold calculation of predators evaluating wounded prey. Then Leonard moved. Slowly, like a man walking toward his own execution. He stood, nodded once at me, wordless and grim, and walked to the AV control rack where the local server traces were accessible through a backup terminal. He plugged in his credentials. Typed fast, faster than I'd seen him move in months. The mainframe's activity history appeared on his laptop screen, a waterfall of access timestamps and authorization chains. I watched him scroll, watched him freeze, watched him scroll back up and zoom in on something specific. There was the trigger point. A user labeled Jacob_Emerson_Senior_integration_read, initiating a recursive override command. Not once. Not twice. 8 times over the past 72 hours. Each time escalating his own permissions. Each time disabling safety protocols. Each time rerouting approval requirements through a buried script labeled /admin_. Leonard clicked deeper. The script expanded on his screen. At the top of the file, approved by Q. That's me. Except I'd never written that script. Never approved anything even remotely resembling it. The room shifted. A collective lean forward like gravity had suddenly intensified. Legal entered. 2 of them in matching charcoal suits, moving directly toward Leonard like they'd rehearsed this entrance in a crisis simulation. What happened? The taller one demanded, voice sharp. Leonard didn't look away from his monitor. Permission escalation triggered a recursive deletion of the legacy architecture framework. The override was uncontained. And the approval, he pointed at the screen, has Quinn Foster's signature attached to it. Both attorneys leaned in. Read the name. I watched their expressions shift from confusion to concern. One turned toward me. You authorized this? I didn't even stand up. Just reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and with one tap forwarded a single email. Sent it directly to the board's group alias. CC'd to legal, the CTO, the CFO. And because I'm not cruel, just methodical, Gregory Emerson himself. Subject line. Permission fraud forensic evidence attached. Inside. A complete export of the backend permissions table. Timestamped audit logs stored off-chain. IP metadata showing where commands actually originated. And a clean, irrefutable comparison between my actual cryptographic signature hash and the forged one Jacob had embedded in his override scripts. Silence crashed down like a wave. Gregory went pale. The kind of pale that happens when money starts evaporating in real time and there's nothing you can do to stop it. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Finally, hoarse and strained, "It's not. I was trying to streamline processes. The bureaucracy here was slowing everything down." One of the legal team cut him off like a guillotine. "Mr. Emerson, you knowingly executed unauthorized privilege escalation using falsified administrative credentials. That's breach of internal compliance and exposes this company to catastrophic legal liability." Jacob actually scoffed like none of this was serious. "It's my father's company." Leonard finally turned away from his laptop. "Not anymore." Even the interns standing awkwardly near the doorway took a step back, sensing structural collapse. One of them quietly took out their phone and started recording. Gregory finally spoke, voice shaking. "Is any of this salvageable?" Leonard didn't answer. He looked at me instead. "So did everyone else." Every executive, every investor, every attorney in that room turned and stared at me, the woman they'd sidelined 3 weeks ago, the dead weight from the old regime. Not Jacob. Not Gregory. Me. I set down my coffee cup, stood slowly, walked to the center of the room with deliberate, measured steps. Nobody breathed. Leonard broke the silence first. "Is there any chance a stable build still exists? Anything functional?" I nodded once. Jacob twitched like he'd been electrocuted. "Wait, you have a copy? That's impossible. I revoked all your access weeks ago." I smiled just barely. "You revoked the access you knew about." Gregory stumbled to his feet like someone had just remembered how to operate his legs. "You're saying there's a recovery option?" I pulled out my phone again, opened a secure monitoring app, tapped twice. A green status indicator pulsed steadily on the screen. "Stable. Current. Mirror server," I said simply. "Backed up hourly. Fully isolated from Jacob's infrastructure changes. Built before he restructured anything. It's clean. It's compliant. And it works." Gregory looked like he'd just been thrown a life preserver in the middle of the ocean. "Can you restore it?" "We'll reinstate your position immediately. Full access. Whatever title you want. Whatever you need." I looked around the room slowly. Every single person staring at me now. Not Jacob. Not Gregory. Me. The woman they'd tried to erase. And I smiled. But this time it wasn't polite or professional. This smile had teeth. "I'm not staying," I said clearly. Gregory blinked. "What?" I stepped forward, pulled a portable encrypted drive from my bag, and placed it gently on the conference table in front of the legal team. "Encrypted. Password protected. This contains a complete snapshot of the stable build. You'll need proper infrastructure support to deploy it, but everything you need is there." Gregory lunged for it like it was the Holy Grail. "Perfect. We'll have it running by tomorrow morning." I held up one hand. "You can't use it." He froze mid-reach. "I'm sorry? You can lease it." His mouth fell open. "What are you talking about?" "I own the recovery environment," I explained calmly. "The version control architecture. The module integration framework. The internal schema includes components I developed independently under separate NDA during pilot testing, which," I glanced at Leonard who was already nodding slowly, "technically grants me intellectual property ownership over the recovery layer architecture." Gregory's face went from pale to gray. "That's not. I've already had it packaged under a licensing agreement," I continued, pulling a printed document from my bag and sliding it across the table. "You get the code. You get the platform. You get to salvage your Series C funding. But only if you agree to my terms." "What terms?" Gregory whispered. I looked directly at Jacob, held his gaze, didn't blink. "I never see him again. He's gone by end of business today. Severance, no contest, no negotiation." Jacob made a strangled sound somewhere between a cough and a whimper. And I continued, turning back to Gregory, "I get 18 months of consulting fees at 3 times my previous salary, plus equity restoration for the shares I would have vested during the time Jacob was destroying my work." Gregory stared at the document. "Read further." His hands trembled slightly. He didn't have a choice. When your house is burning and someone shows up with the only fire extinguisher, you don't haggle about the price. He picked up a pen. Signed. I collected the document, folded it carefully and placed it back in my bag. One of the investors caught me near the exit. "You leaving for good?" I nodded. "Already have 4 offers waiting. Companies that value competence over chromosomes." He chuckled darkly. Send me your contact information. I might have something better. I walked out without looking back. Down the hallway past the framed mission statements and motivational posters about innovation and teamwork. Past HR's whiteboard still displaying today's inspirational quote. Failure is just success in progress. Sure. But some failures delete millions of dollars in company value and require a recovery architecture with my name encrypted into every line of code. They wanted my work without respecting the person who built it. Now they'd pay rent on what they could have protected. 3 days later, I sat in my home office, laptop open, contract signed, payment cleared. Vanguard Tech deployed Echo_5 under my licensing terms. The platform worked flawlessly. The Series C funding came through, slightly reduced but intact. Investors were satisfied. Legal was satisfied. The SEC closed their preliminary inquiry without filing charges. Jacob Emerson was gone. Severance package. Non-disparagement clause. No references, no LinkedIn endorsement, no trace he'd ever held that position except in cautionary tales shared quietly among engineers over drinks. Gregory sent me one email. Thank you for your professionalism during a difficult transition. I didn't respond. Leonard sent me another. You saved us. I'm sorry we didn't protect you sooner. I responded to that one. I saved myself. You watched. He never replied. My phone buzzed with a message from Alexis, the junior developer who'd helped me document everything. She'd just been promoted to senior engineer, my old position, with explicit instructions to rebuild the team culture. Thank you, her message said, for showing us we didn't have to accept it. I smiled at that one. Genuinely. Because revenge isn't always loud. It's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's just competence, patience, and documentation. Sometimes it's building your lifeboat in silence while everyone else argues about rearranging deck chairs. Sometimes it's knowing exactly when to walk away, exactly what you're worth, and exactly how to make them pay for forgetting. Jacob learned that nepotism can get you in the door, but it can't code. Can't architect. Can't save you when the system you don't understand collapses under your incompetence. Gregory learned that loyalty without respect is just exploitation with better branding. Me. I learned I didn't need their validation. Didn't need their titles. Didn't need their approval. I just needed documentation, leverage, and the patience to let foolish people destroy themselves while I built the exit. 6 months later, I'm lead architect at a competitor. Better pay, better equity, better culture. I'm building something new, something mine, something nobody can take credit for or delete with a shiny button. And every time I push code to production, clean and tested and documented, I think about that demo day. That beautiful, catastrophic moment when incompetence met consequence in front of 60 witnesses. I think about Jacob's face as everything collapsed. I think about Gregory's desperation. And I smile. Because I didn't just survive. I won. Not by playing their game but by building my own, protecting it and making them pay fair market value when they finally realized what they'd lost. So here's to every engineer sidelined by nepotism. Every professional erased by entitlement. Every builder watching incompetence get promoted while you document the disasters. Keep your backups. Keep your logs. Keep your leverage. And when they finally come begging, make sure they pay full price. Thanks for sticking around for this entire journey of calculated justice. If you enjoyed watching corporate karma play out in real time, smash that subscribe button and hit the like. Share this with anyone who's ever been overlooked, undervalued, or replaced by someone's useless offspring. Let's make sure the next Jacob knows exactly what's waiting when competence stops covering for confidence. Until next time, keep building, keep documenting, and never, ever delete your backups.